Welcome to the Slabtown class. I'm so excited to show you how to make this bag, but first let's gather our tools and materials. Let's start with fabrics. You'll need 1 yard of the main fabric, 1/3 of a yard of accent fabric in 9 to 12 ounce, non-stretch waxed canvas or denim that is 60 inches wide. Add 1 yard of 10 to 12 ounce non-stretch lining fabric at the same 60 inch width. 1 1/2 a yard of 1 inch wide twill tape binding. Or if you've purchased a Klum House Slabtown kit, all your fabric comes pre-cut with notches and rivet placement marks. As for leather, you'll need 170 inches of 3/4 inch wide leather strapping and 40 inches of 1 1/8 inch wide leather strapping for the backpack straps. That leather should be 7 to 10 ounces in thickness. A scrap of 7 to 10 ounce leather that's at least 5 by 2 inches for your backpack reinforcement. And a slightly thinner, about 5 to 7 ounce leather scrap of the same size for zipper pulls and washers. Or if you've purchased a Klum House Slabtown kit, all your leather pieces come pre-cut and hole punched. As for hardware and notions, you'll start by grabbing 2 12-inch zippers with large holes in the sliders, 3 line 24 snaps, 2 3/4 inch center bar buckles, 24 medium 3/8 inch tubular rivets, 2 small 1/4 inch tubular rivets, a few spools of all-purpose thread, or, of course, all the hardware and notions that are provided in your kit, including your I made this label. There are a few essential tools for making the Slabtown, and they include a tubular rivet peening tool, a hand snap setter with a dot anvil for setting line 24 snaps, a drive punch or a rotary punch that makes 1/8 inch holes, and a non-rubber mallet and hard surface. We'll be using a Bakelite mallet and a stone slab. Top stitching needles size 100, a roll of double-sided leather tape or Wonder tape, a fabric pencil, a 24 inch by 6 inch quilting ruler, a 14 inch by 4 inch quilting ruler, and a 5 inch by 5 inch square quilting ruler. And finally, our favorites, craft clips. We also recommend some heavy-duty sewing tools that will help along the way. First up is an edge stitch presser foot and a magnetic seam guide for sewing straight seams, a Gina-majig to help get over those extra bulky spots, a walking foot to aid in feeding the fabric through the machine on thick seams, a rivet removal tool because, you know, we're all human, denim needles to help pierce through all those heavy layers, and top stitching thread if you choose to use it, but don't worry, we'll discuss that technique in a little bit. And if you plan on making your own leather straps, you'll need a 3/4 inch round end punch and a round end punch that is at least 1 1/8, but you'll get a great result with a 1 1/2 inch as well, and a leather pen. Now let's talk about the fabrics that you're going to need to make your Slabtown. For exterior fabric, my favorite fabric to work with is waxed canvas. I really love how it shows a storied patina over time, and you can see all the marks and creases in the wax. It's also water resistant and it provides a lot of structure. Now, if you're sourcing your own fabric, like denim or canvas or duck canvas, it's important that it doesn't have a lot of stretch and that it also has structure too. Now, for lining fabric, I like to use like a 10 to 12 ounce canvas, and I like an off-white, like lighter color, so that if I'm digging around in my bag for stuff, it's easy to find it. After cutting and marking your fabric, you're gonna have to punch holes in the rivet placement marks. So let's go over how to do that. I have my 1/8 inch drive punch, my cutting board, my mallet, and one side panel with rivet placement marks right there. So I'm just gonna hold my drive punch over the mark and whack it with the mallet. And I'm going to do the same for the other one. All right, there's some holes in your fabric. Punch out the rest of your holes and keep cutting your fabric. Let me just give you one tip. There's actually only one lining side panel piece. So don't make the assumption that there's two because there's only one, and I just wanted to give you that tip. So put on a podcast, rock out, and cut the rest of your fabric. Now we're gonna work with some leather, and I'm gonna show you how to cut out your backpack strap reinforcement. I have a scrap here of vegetable tanned 9 to 10 ounce leather, and that's what we're gonna use. And right now I have my pattern piece laid down on the back of the leather, and I'm gonna grab my leather pen. And actually, I started with a 90-degree angle here when I cut out my scrap. So I'm gonna scooch my pattern down into that angle, and it's gonna save me a little bit of time, so I won't have to cut out those two sides. Okay, I'm gonna grab my ruler, and it's gonna help me get a straight line when I'm tracing this. So just scoot that up all the way to the end of the pattern piece. And then I can run a line just along the edge there. Okay. And let's get this other edge here. Just like that. Now, you might have noticed also that there's rounded corners here. And I'll show you how to use a corner punch for those, but don't feel like you have to use one to get those rounded corners. But I'm gonna go ahead and trace them into my piece of leather. And then lastly, let's just make little silver pen marks in all the rivet placement holes there, including these little half circle ones here because those are our center marks. And I'm using a leather pen here because it's got a silver ink that shows up really nicely on the leather. And also, it will rub off if you accidentally make the wrong mark. And there's all my marks. All right, so let's go ahead and cut this piece out. I got my rotary cutter, I'm on a cutting mat, and I also have my quilting ruler here. Okay, so using a lot of pressure and a sharp blade, go ahead and run your cut. Whew, that was a lot of pressure. All right. Get one more cut. All right, so now I have my rectangle. I'm gonna grab my cutting board and my corner punch here. So it just has a little rounded corner punch there. And we're just gonna nick all 4 of the corners on here. Okay. So just peel that off there and work your way around and do the rest of the 3. This reinforcement leather is going to be on the inside of your bag. So don't feel like you have to make it all perfect or anything. So there's all my corners punched, and now let's go ahead and use our 1/8 inch drive punch to punch those holes. So I'm using this cutting board here with this drive punch because it helps preserve the sharpness of the drive punch tools. I'm using the 1/8 inch drive punch because it's the really perfect size for the tubular rivets that are gonna go in these holes. When you're punching this, you don't have to whack it like super intensely, especially if you're using a sharp drive punch. I'm really tapping it until I can feel it go in, and I can actually feel it kind of start to stick into the cutting board, and that's enough, and that means that I've made my way all the way through the leather. You also might notice these little pieces of leather popping out of the drive punch, and that's just how it works. It'll push it up and out the more holes that you punch with it. Okay, so let's grab our last 2 holes, which are these center marks here. As you can see here, it's just half of the drive punch on the leather. And when I punch it, it's just a little half moon shape there. That just helps us find center later. And there's my little half moon shape there. And now my reinforcement is ready to go. All right, so the last thing we gotta do is prepare our leather straps. So what I have right here is the handle strap, and I have a piece of 9 to 10 ounce vegetable tanned leather. So often it's sold as harness leather or bridle leather, and it's just dyed with some nice chestnut brown dye. So I'm actually gonna work on the back of the strap. And I'm gonna lay my pattern piece that I've already pre-punched the holes in on top of that. And I'm gonna grab my leather pen here and just mark the ends that are round, just right there, and then through my rivet holes right there, and the same on the other end there. Now notice I'm not marking the whole curve. It's because I don't need to. I just really need the apex of the round end so I know where to align that to when I grab the tool. All right, so we have that there. And now I need my cutting board, because anytime you're using cutting tools, you always need to be using a cutting board or you'll ruin your tools. So that's super important to remember. So this is a 3/4 inch round end punch. And whenever you're buying or using end punches, you need to match the width of the strap that you're actually punching. So this is a 3/4 inch strap, which is why we're using a 3/4 inch round end punch. All right, so let's talk about how to punch this. So I have my silver pen mark right there. And the curve, the apex of the curve is aligned right there with the silver pen mark. Then you kind of want to rock the tool a little bit back. So the tendency is to kind of collapse the tool down, but you just want to rock it back, make sure it's vertical, and give it just a little tip back, because most of the cutting that's happening is happening on this part of the cutting tool. All right, so now this is placed firmly. I'm holding it in place. I'm just going to whack it with the mallet. And you can obviously tell when it's actually been cut. All right, so that's one round end. That's what it looks like from the right side. And then let's do the other round end. So I'll place that like we did before. And then what I also want to point out is that you want to make sure that the ends of the punch are aligned right on the edges of your strap or slightly over the edges. So this is something that I would like to see. And then this is something that is not quite right, where you can tell that if I go and punch this, it's not going to punch the end evenly across the strap. So we're looking for an even curve spread across the strap. So that looks good to me right there. So I'm going to go ahead and whack it. All right. So now I have both my ends punched. I'm going to grab my 1/8 inch drive punch and punch my rivet placement marks. Okay, and the next one. All right, and that's how you prepare leather straps. So go ahead and prepare the rest of your leather straps. My favorite thing about the Slabtown is how you can personalize it as much as you want. You can pick the main fabric, the accent fabrics, you can pick your leather, hardware, and even a pop of a zipper color. On top of that, you can personalize your bag with leather stamps. Right here, I've got a piece of leather and I'm gonna finish stamping it. I've got my strike post for my leather stamps, and I'm gonna just finish the message here. Handcrafted for you. And just because I usually make a lot of bags for people, and I love just putting that little personal message in the bag for someone. Okay, so the way that you do this is you want some water and you want to be able to wet the leather so that it can receive the stamp a little bit better. So I'm just gonna wipe this paper towel on here. It doesn't need to be like soaking or anything, but it just helps so the stamp can set in a little bit better. And then I'm going to take my Y, because I'm going to write you. And I want to make sure it's not upside down when I'm stamping. So I can see it there. And I'm going to put it just right here. I'm holding it with a little bit of pressure, vertically aligning the strike post, and I'm going to take my mallet and just whack it once or twice. No need to hit it really hard multiple times. Okay, now I'm going to switch here to the O. And I don't really care that much if they're a little bit crooked because I want it to look handmade. I'm going to check that my U is facing the correct direction for the message that I'm writing. And I'm also checking and just keeping an eye on the spacing between the letters, eyeballing if it's even, and even if it's slightly not, that's okay too. And there it is, easy as that. The Slabtown has a lot of top stitching, and there are two ways to go about it. This one is with actual top stitching thread, and this one right here is with 2 all-purpose threads in the needle. So why would you go one way or the other? Well, some sewing machines just can't quite get the tension right, or they kind of choke up on top stitching thread. So as you can tell when looking at both of these, there isn't that much difference. And I've noticed machines that are a little bit more testy, or maybe older, or just aren't loving the top stitching thread when you're testing it on that part of the project, they'll actually be fine with this doubled up all-purpose thread. The look is the same, really. When you're using top stitching thread, you're gonna stay on an all-purpose bobbin, because sewing machines also don't love really thick thread in the bobbin, and it's not great for tension. So most of the time when we're sewing, we're always trying to set our machines up for success. So these are ways that you can do that. Anytime you're using top stitching thread, we're gonna stay on a size 100 top stitching needle, because we need to make a hole in the fabric that can really take that thickness of thread. And also the eye of the needle for top stitching thread is a lot bigger, so it won't be as hard to actually thread 2 threads through the eye of the needle, or that top stitching thread through it. When I use both all-purpose threads on the machine, I pop 2 of the spool pins on top of the machine, and I thread through all the regular spots, even 2 threads through the eye of the needle. So no machine is the same and no fabric is the same. So it's worth it to spend some time testing things out and figure out what works best for you and your project.